Katy, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Adam?
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Yes, I'm excited to get to chat with you.
At C Trust, we're really excited to have the opportunity to interview amazing professionals in our space and to really highlight the heart of the work that we all do and the people who make it possible. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and your agency, some things that make you guys special?
Oh, sure. Well, my name's Katy. I'm the executive director at Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. We have been in business now for 18 years. We have both an egg donor program as well as a surrogacy program. We have an amazing team built of people who have been egg donors, surrogates, and even built their families this way. And so I think one thing that really stands out is just that experience that everybody has from the different angles in this industry. I myself was a donor, now I say like a million years ago. And the donor field looked a little bit different back then, but that's kind of what introed me into this industry. I went on to be a surrogate now 10 years ago. I always say that was the best thing our family ever did. And that's definitely the heartbeat behind what we do is walking donors and surrogates through this decision process that this is something that they want to do and what does that commitment look like and the education partnered with those families who need their help in order to grow their families and ensuring that everybody has a quality match, that they are excited about who they're working with, knowing that this is not quick and easy, that this is a journey, and that they're excited about who's on that journey with them.
It's amazing. What are some things
Yeah.
that you think are different about your agency? And by the way,
Ooh,
donor and surrogate, what a cool background.
yeah,
You talk about
it is.
perspective and connection.
It is. It is. Difference, I think, is our the emphasis we place on education as well as transparency and relationships. So I'm sure you find this just being in the field, you're out to, oh, I had a friend that was a surrogate or somebody like, well, most time people don't even know what egg donation is, but surrogacy people can always have some connection with what that looks like. But we really focus on that education and what that commitment looks like and what someone can expect in saying yes to this process. And so, we have families that say, well, what happens if a donor backs out? And I usually say, we don't have donors that back out. Like, we don't have donors that start meds and then decide not to move forward anymore because of the education. A lot of that comes because we have other staff members besides myself that have been donors and women that have built their family via egg donation. So they're able to have that experience and what that really looks like. And so that education piece is huge and transparency. One reason why we love partnering with you guys, financial transparency is so important. When someone goes to our website, you can see what our fees are. You can see what you can expect a donor's fee and a surrogate fee to look like. We have those conversations up front so people know what to expect later on. And partnering with you guys at C Trust allows both our egg donor and our surrogate program for all of those things to be clearly defined, for families to always have access to that information in real time is super important as well.
That's amazing. And I love the spirit of transparency and education, right?
Yeah.
And look, we've had the privilege of working with you through a lot of cases, and it's
Yeah.
obvious in working with your clients that they come to the process, at least to our part of the process, highly prepared and informed,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. Tell me, when you think about key areas of advice, right? Or common misunderstandings, or gosh, if I was going to be an intended parent looking at this big, scary, complex, emotional, expensive process, what few nuggets of advice would you give me as I was starting to think about that and determining if it was right for me and my family?
It doesn't have to be fast. I think a lot of families, they're told by a physician, this is what you have to do, and they feel rushed
Mhm.
to what agency am I going to use? What egg donor? What surrogate? What does legal look like? And there are so many components, but you can also just, you know, do one bit at a time and get the education, feel comfortable with that step, and then move on to that next step. Now, that's not to say that you need to take 5 years to build your family, because most people, once they get this news, they're like, we're ready to go now. But typically a quick Google review and whatever's going to come to the top is not always the agency or the platform that's going to serve
Mm.
you the best in this process. So taking the time to educate yourself on what it looks like and knowing um, that you can do this in stages. I tell people often, like, you should never feel hurried. If you enter this process and you just feel rushed and hurried, that's a good indicator to like slow down, make sure that no one is putting that external pressure on you, because it doesn't have to be that fast.
No, that's great advice. I think we see that frustration around a lot of items in the process, right? And if people go
Yeah.
to it with patience, because you got to get the people right, the
Hmm.
providers right. You need the right surrogate, because this isn't just a transaction. This is a family building, lifelong events,
Yeah.
right? And those
Yeah.
relationships and support really matter.
Hmm. It does.
You mentioned the first person you Google or find may not be the right person to
Yeah.
work with. And gosh, I can just imagine being a parent and saying, like, who do I work with here? There's a
Yeah.
lot, and there's a lot of information out there. How do you select the right partner or the right professional?
Um, well, we also have a big emphasis on relationships, and we want the experience that everyone has to be positive amongst each other that are parties, but also with our team. And so I say take your time talking to be that industry professionals like attorneys or mental health providers, but for sure the agency that you choose to partner with. Can you get a hold and talk to somebody that has either been doing this a really long time or has walked through this process themselves and understands the pitfalls that can come, and just knowing what's most important to that program and that team, I think is really important. There are a lot of great agencies out there that have a lot of wonderful experience with owners and leaders that have huge hearts for helping people. And you typically are only going to be able to feel that when you talk to them on the phone. And having a collective group of people, our agency functions this way, and I know a lot of others do, but I think it's important to have a collective group of people, an agency that can pull not only from their personal experience, but from other people. Either if they're a smaller agency and there's only one or two people on staff, I think a great question would be like, hey, who's your support system? What other agencies do you get information from? Because we've been here for 18 years. I think combined experience, we are hundreds of years, and there's still something new all the time. And so having that space of collaboration in order to serve our clients well is really important.
I think that's spot on. And it
Yeah.
sure seems like having somebody you like and trust really matters.
Hmm.
Most cases go beautifully,
Yeah.
right? But when
And we
that,
hope they do.
yeah,
I always tell people we want people to end this process thinking they didn't need us. If they didn't need us, then we stayed one step ahead of them, and it was great. And a lot do end that way. But when they don't, you do need a supportive team.
yeah, most I always say like most journeys go very beautifully, especially with the
Hmm.
right professional team and the right agency. Things
Yep.
go well, right? They
Yeah,
they
we
really
do.
do, and it's but these people that you're working with on this journey are a part of one of the biggest events of your life. So I think it's
Hmm.
important that you like them and
Yeah.
that you can trust in them. I think it's also important that you have the right team, because when things go wrong or not as planned, which does happen,
Yeah.
that's when I see the quality of the team i.e., the attorneys, the professionals, the agency, where they
Mhm.
really separate themselves because that's when we really show our expertise and guidance and how much we care.
Agreed. So
But
much.
and if the parents and surrogates trust the professionals when things are challenging, those usually go a lot better, don't they?
Most certainly does.
Talk to me about what advice you have for surrogates. What key advice you had as a past surrogate, as one who runs a major
Yeah.
agency.
Um, golly, why do I always come back to education? But that is a huge that really
Oh,
is knowing, like you said, knowing the agency that you're working with. What types of families do they help and serve? How does their matching process works? Who do they partner with on financials? What does that look like? How does finding legal representation work for them? All of those things are slightly unique to an agency that you might work with. With us, we're really big, like donors get to, sorry, donors too, but surrogates get to pick the family that they want to carry for and they get to pick their compensation. We don't talk anybody. Sometimes a surrogate will come to us with a higher compensation. We end up saying, like, hey, that is totally fair. And not every single family that we work with is going to be a good fit for you. We never negotiate those things back and forth because we just believe that everybody needs to be comfortable with the commitment that they're making moving forward. And if we start those negotiation terms at the very beginning, it usually just kind of continues through the process. And our personal perspective is that that is not helpful in the relationship building aspect. And so partnering with somebody that you align with as a surrogate who's going to advocate for you in the same way that they're going to advocate for intended parents, in order to get back to the agreed upon or the expectations that were set early on. Um, I personally feel that surrogates shouldn't go in with it being so gray, like, "Well, I don't really know. Like, am I going to pump? Am I going to deliver here? What is the hospital? I haven't picked my OB. Like, we'll just all figure this out as we go." We as an agency are really big on we're going to make those decisions on the front end. Families are actually going to have that information prior to even committing to a match. Um, and that will just serve everyone a whole lot better through the journey.
I love that. You hit on one of the words that kept coming to my mind when you were describing what's so important. You kept saying education, which I couldn't agree more. Education is critical. But what that does is it sets the right expectations, right?
Right.
So people know what to expect and there's no
Hmm.
surprises, right? I think
Yep.
a
It's
lot of times
important.
when we see tension, when we see problems in cases, it's because they didn't have the right education ultimately the right
Yep.
expectations, and
Hmm.
it causes unnecessary issues.
Yep.
What do
Agreed.
you what do you what advice do you give donors? We talk about such a beautiful
Ooh,
thing people do.
it is.
Or reflect on
Um,
like how you're like you donated years ago. How did that feel to you? How does that look years later?
yeah, so I mean, I donated now almost 20 years ago. So the landscape of egg donation looked totally different than it does now. It most certainly was not. I mean, even when I started our egg donor program, I just told people I was a stay-at-home mom. Like it wasn't even worth explaining. I had three little kids. It wasn't even worth explaining what I did, because it was just so foreign to so many people. Um, but I did what was called an anonymous donation, and I put that in quotes because that word should never be used anymore. Our agency uses the term unidentified if someone is going through the process not meeting a family. We do have a known egg donor program where people meet in the beginning. They discuss expectations. They meet with a mental health professional, and they talk about what a long-term relationship might look like. It looks a lot like a surrogacy, mental health evaluation and that sort of thing. So when I did it, it was just a way to help. I was kind of like, oh, what do people do that need help? And I was in college and I thought like, oh, okay, that's a cool way to help somebody. Had no idea how it would shape like absolutely the rest of my life. Um, I'm glad I don't, but I don't know that family. Like my story is different than some others. Like I've made myself available through the donor sibling registry and through, well, at first 23andMe. Now we've done other things, but so should someone be curious, like my information is accessible. But I entered that at a different season in the industry than like how we are conducting ourselves. But I'm glad that that was a way that I could help. Hope that family has been blessed and all is well in that space. But surrogacy definitely defines like the relationship component of why I love what I do and what we get to help people do. Just because I do have a long-standing relationship with the family that I carried for.
Let's talk about that a bit. I think of surrogates in like the superhero hero category, like
Yeah,
because I just can't. It's such an amazing thing they do for the family, and I know there's compensation,
yeah,
and but what they go through, I don't think they're fully compensated, and I don't think most of them are doing it for that reason. They're doing it to do something
yeah.
amazing to help a family. I always struggle with it to think about like what's a comparison when people ask me when you're talking about the people, it's like what's surrogacy
Hmm.
and I always liking it to like an organ donor. Very different.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
they've done something so amazing for another family. They enter this category of like elite women who are just doing something amazing to give back that's something that nobody can ever take away from them.
Yeah.
As a surrogate, react to that. Like, how did you feel that way? How do surrogates usually feel after their journey, reflecting on it?
Um, I always say it was the best thing our family ever did. Not for, but it gave just as much to us in those intangible ways that we were able to give to that family. Just the relationships. My husband and I went on to be foster parents, and the family that I cared for, like she was in that space and she was like someone that I leaned on. Like she was that person that and really shaped what that part of our life looked like. I have two daughters. They're teenagers. They have no idea what it's like to be pregnant and what that looks like. But I do hope one day they'll look back because they're just like, oh, mom carried a baby. Like nobody knows or cares. It doesn't matter to them. It's just a part of our story. But I do hope one day they'll look back and they will look at it as something um, that we chose to do as a family that it can't ever be repaid. And that's often what I tell surrogates, like when people are talking about compensation and all of that kind of stuff, or even when intended parents are like, well, what is this? And it's you can't compensate a person enough for the fact that they gave you a child. So let's break this down. Let's talk about what this compensation is for. This compensation is for their time, energy, effort, risk in the process as well. But like you can't put a dollar amount on that anyways.
Right.
Um, and so I always tell like you're not valued by how much you're compensated. That's not a reflection of you because that's not possible. And I personally was compensated like a third, if not a fourth of what most people are compensated now. So, but like it doesn't make what I did a fourth less important than what someone else is doing. Um, because we've gotten so much, I don't look from that from a hero's aspect, but rather like something that I was called to do. And helping a family in a way that we could. And when people say, like, why did you choose to be a surrogate? I typically say, because I could. I was walking through TJ Maxx and I called my husband. I was like, I think I should probably be a surrogate. He was like, you want to be pregnant again? And I was like, I mean, it'll be fine. Like, we had 3 easy pregnancies. I did have C-sections, but I was like, it'll be fine. And because I was already working in the industry, and I know that. I mean, I have conversations with people all the time. I would love to be a surrogate, and they ask about their pregnancy history, or I ask about, and it's like a lot of women don't qualify to do this. Like a lot of women haven't had pregnancies to be a surrogate. And so if someone looks up and they can, I always say, like, it's worth considering. Like, it's a really cool way to help another family. And so many can't. I mean, so many people really don't qualify to help in this way. So if you can, I always encourage people just to kick it around. We can match you with an amazing family. and you'll look up and after a few years and it'll be one of the best things your family did either too.
Talking about helping somebody or a group that deserves people that deserve a family. I think
Mhm.
everybody, I'm a big believer in
Most
everybody should
certainly.
have the opportunity to build a family.
Of course.
Like it's anybody who has kids or has a family understands that, right? Like, because
Yeah.
it changes your life in such a dramatic way, in such a positive way, even when they're being a little pain in the butt, right? But everybody deserves the opportunity to have a family. And it's something I'm passionate about. But people who are willing to pursue that dream all the way through the surrogacy process and put the
Mhm.
time, energy, and effort and sacrifice to build their family through third party, they definitely deserve a family. I mean, they're
Yeah.
fighting for to have a family and to help
Mhm.
somebody that's doing that is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of like what gets us out of bed every day, right? We get to help
Yeah.
deserving people have families. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Let's talk about we started off by talking about things that come up, right? The challenging cases get an overwhelming amount of focus and coverage because those are the
Right.
issues that could come up that people are scared about and things like that. But when I think about them, so much of it boils down to what we talked about earlier, which is relationships and
Mhm.
trust. And when
Yeah.
things go wrong, who do you want in your corner navigating that to the best possible outcome?
Yep.
What advice do you give clients on how to navigate challenges or common challenges in the process, even down to like the dynamics of the relationships that can be stressed through challenges?
Right. So I think that relationship piece and the expectations coming into this journey, we as an agency, the vast majority of the families that we serve want a relationship. They want to build something ongoing. They want to build that trust. And in turn, that is the expectation of a lot of the surrogates. I don't know why that is. We just don't have a lot of like business transactions at our agency. I- I'm assuming that's because most of the people on the forefront of our program are very relationship oriented and they all have great relationships personally from this process. Um, so I think that's a piece of it. But an agency is there to support you. And so nothing is too small. We always tell, surrogates, families that like if something happened that you were like, ooh, either let's talk about how we have a hard conversation with that other person. If we feel like, hey, this would be best handled between the two of you, let's dialogue about this. Let's talk about how we could have this conversation. Or, hey, let's go back to the agreement. Let's see what it says. And then our job as an agency is to help advocate for whatever everybody agreed on and to make sure that like, okay, we're all on the same page. This is how we're going to handle this moving forward. Um, but it is about trust, right? Like in the surrogacy journey, you have a woman who has her own body, her own autonomy, and she is charged with taking care of and having a happy, healthy baby. And then you have families that have expectations of what that should look like. So talking about those on the front end is super duper important. Not sweeping things under the rug is always helpful, and your agency can help with what that looks like. So I mean, I had a trying complication in my surrogacy delivery. I was like hospitalized. Like we didn't know if I was going to come in, have him early or if everything was going to be healthy. And it was something that nobody could have ever planned for. But I remember the mom that I cared for, she called me and we were 5 hours away. They could not be at the hospital with me, but she said, Katy, I trust you to make the same decisions for our child as you would make for your own. And that was built on the relationship that we had. But also, once she said that to me, and those are true statements, but like that built a bond and that helped ensure that how we were going to navigate this was collectively as a group and everyone coming to that with that posture. And she's right. I was not going to make a decision for my body any different than I was going to make a decision if I was carrying their child or a biological child of mine. Like it's all the same. It's all the same. And so just knowing that and her honestly being vulnerable enough to say those words out loud to me, because she might have thought that, but some would say
Right.
like, well, I'm not going to say that to her because I want to make sure that this contract is executed and I'm going to have to, whatever. But her just saying, I trust you that you are going to make the same decisions for our baby as you would make for yours. Keep us informed. And yeah, when those doctors came in, held up the phone. Hey, you need to talk to these people too. And we navigated that. And here we are more than 10 years later with a friendship that extends well beyond the fact that I carried their son for them.
That's amazing. I love that element of communication and trust. That's a constant theme here
Hmm.
today. Um, it really does matter. And I think, what we see, and I know you do a great job of this, is go to the professionals. If it's something that you think's confrontational or you're unsure, don't let that drive a wedge in a relationship. You have
Yep.
experts that deal with these things every day that you're paying to
So
guide
true.
the journey. Go to them
Hmm.
first and say, what's typical here? This is
Yeah.
happening. How should I respond? Is this right or wrong? And I also am a big advocate of, from my seat, especially, let us be the person in the middle when it's appropriate. Right.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to a tense conversation, the agency and as a liaison between the parties, so you don't let that become the center stone of the relationship, or the escrow company when it's a financial calculation dispute, which are usually black and white, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That let go to the professionals first. Don't put that wedge between your relationship because we see
For
often
sure.
where due to the amount of emotion and complexity sometimes their confusion or concern around minor things trickle
Hmm.
into a
Huge
relationship
things.
dynamic that should be completely avoided. And
Yep.
that level of trust and that level, hey, we're just going to do the right thing and work together is beautiful.
Yeah. We have a program called our Family program, and it is a program for friends and family who choose to be someone's surrogate. Now, this is not somebody that they find in a Facebook group. This is like legitimately a friend or a family member. But it is drastically discounted. And the reason for that is we want to help them maintain that relationship. Like, let us have the hard conversations of, hey, we're going to put all these funds in escrow and we're going to have a mental health evaluation and we're going to put a contract in place and then we're going to now oftentimes those surrogates are not being compensated near what an industry standard is, and that's okay, but we want to help maintain that relationship long term
Yeah.
and where people look up at the end. And so I always say that's when they can lean us and we can, raise our hand and be like, okay, so in typical surrogacy arrangements, this is how this is handled. And this is how lost wages work. And this is what you do pay for. And these are the things that you don't need to pay for. Um, and that's we always say that's our give back. We don't want to contribute to Lifetime movies. We don't want any more of those stories based on real life situations. So if more agencies that have good intentions are involved in surrogacy journeys, and less people are going totally independent, not knowing how to do it, that helps. And so that's why we offer super discounted in order to hopefully have more people that are saying yes, just to ensure that that relationship is maintained long term.
No, it's awesome that you offer that program.
Yeah.
Independent. We see most of the kind of risky structures and challenges do occur in our independent book.
Hmm.
And it's mostly because, well, at least with us, they were wise enough to pick an escrow company. Right?
Yeah,
And,
truth.
like, and I'm biased, but I think a pretty good one. But there's so much missed, and we see
Hmm.
relationships fall apart that start with the best intentions and
Yep,
really doing something
absolutely.
amazing. But it's a really hard dynamic to navigate when
Hmm.
especially when there's a personal relationship, there's money involved, there's a pregnancy
Yep,
involved. Having experts help guide it is so important. That's awesome.
yep,
You also offer that
it helps.
service.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about escrow. You probably
Yeah.
talk about escrow as much as I do. Well, maybe not as much as I do, but I'm sure you get asked from your
It's still an
clients,
important part. Yeah.
right? Well, why this escrow thing exists? How do they pick a good partner? Um, how do you explain it? Or what questions do you get commonly?
So, there's so many different avenues that people can go escrow wise. To be transparent, often people come to us and they haven't done the research on that. So that is where someone gets to lean on us. And, we have guidelines of what we allow escrow providers to do and whatnot. Um, Seeds, the organization, is coming out with standards around escrow. And since our agency abides by seed standards, that will even be part of it. We don't refer to partners that are not meeting those. So we know we have not had anything bad happen with you guys in 5 year, I don't know how long. It's been a really long time. There have been other players in this industry. We have had clients affected by other people. But we know when families come to us, they want to know, is my money safe? Is it secure? And is it going to be spent in the way that we have agreed for it to be spent? And so partnering with you all allows me to be able to say yes. Yes, I 100% know what you deposit in escrow with Seed Trust is safe through, I think you guys now have like $100 million bond. Like that money is not walking off. We love the checks and balances that you guys have in place in order to make sure that contracts are reviewed before disbursements go out. And when that clients' accounts are closed, that bills have been paid, that it goes through those proper channels. It goes back to everything's not fast and everything's not fast, but it doesn't have to be fast when we're making sure that everything is safe and secure. One thing we appreciate most, I think, is the transparency, where a family can log in and they can see where are my funds, how much is in there, where has it gone. There's some transparency for a surrogate and an egg donor. I know that looks a little bit different depending on which role that they're in, but just knowing that, I know a lot of agencies that either keep them in-house or smaller programs, they have to request what that looks like. I know when I was a surrogate, that's how it worked, was you had to like request to see where that funds were. And like, that's weird and awkward from a surrogate perspective. That's weird. But also from the family that I cared for, that wasn't particularly helpful for them. They wanted to know in real time. And so we appreciate that families have access to their accounts in real time at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's when they want to look and see where their funds have gone, that they have access to that. So since transparency, we value that so much, that's why we choose to partner with you all.
We appreciate the partnership. I love that you talk about the past. I think what most people don't recognize or realize or remember at this point,
Hmm.
you talked about donating 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Sea Trust entered the space 10 years ago. And gosh, you talk about a different landscape in the escrow
Yeah.
component. And, we started off because we saw that there was a need for the money component to be managed better
Yeah,
in a
for
more
sure.
secure way that added value and trust people and that people could trust. Because of all the things you said, there was a lot of actors that are operators, and usually not with bad intent, just the lack of understanding of what you should
Hmm.
have in place as a financial company,
Yeah.
that were also offering a very minimal service of just kind of holding and dispersing at will without any checks of the contractor
Right.
receipts. We said, look, gosh, there needs to be a financial company that is operating like a secure financial company and that truly acts as a fiduciary to make sure the money's managed fairly between the
Right.
parties, where it doesn't give either side an advantage. The IP's money is administered per their agreement or their approval, and the surrogate's paid fairly per her agreement,
Yeah.
and that it should be transparent and worry free. Gosh, 10 years ago, people looked at me like I had three heads when I started talking about this stuff. And like, how can you do that? And it's been so fun to help evolve the industry in a positive way.
Right.
But with all the negative press that's out there around escrow and things that have gone wrong, it's important that people are educated on how to pick the right
Hmm.
one and how to make sure.
Right.
Because, over the years, we've taken on a couple $1 million of pro bono cases to help
Yeah.
people who were victims of picking the wrong escrow
Hmm.
provider. I always say escrow is one of the cheapest expenses from a fee standpoint you will pay in your
Most
journey.
certainly.
If you pick the wrong one, it will be the most expensive one.
Hmm.
So pick the right one. And I think the seed standard, which you and I got to work on the board together at Seeds,
Yeah,
and are both passionate about the industry as a whole beyond just our businesses.
right.
The seed standard, I think, gives people a beacon to look at as far as a minimum standard.
Yeah,
Um, which to me, when if you hear anybody complaining about that, run, right?
yeah,
Because it's truly a minimum standard that protects, that gives people a guidepost of what should be in place to lower their risk. And it's not complex stuff, right? It's that they should be
no,
qualified. There should be proper governance in place to ensure the money's
yeah.
managed correctly and
But
fairly.
But there has to be a barrier of entry, especially, I mean, that can be one of the hardest things about this industry as a whole. Like, it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West. Somebody can open up an agency tomorrow and facilitate a journey after just going through their own.
Sure.
I was lucky enough to acquire an agency, a surrogacy program that, I've been a part of building for the last 8 years, but like, that was a huge benefit. Like the previous owner and her experience and that staff. Um, and so there should be some barrier of entry. And if anything, most certainly financial. Um, if you don't have the money to have the bonds and insurance and all the things and the checks and balances in the staff, I'm not sure that we should be managing hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars for people.
And people
And
should not trust their money with somebody that doesn't have the baseline protections in place. You can go to a
yeah.
boutique ice cream stand, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to a financial company
Yeah.
or an expert you're trusting to guide you through the absolute most critical process of your journey, you should really pick the experts. And I agree,
Hmm.
not that it's about not having competition. There's plenty of competition. It's about making sure people doing it are qualified so deserving families don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Fraud occurs in every industry. In
Hmm.
every segment, there's bad actors. And just like you can't demonize an entire group just because there's bad actors within their segment. I think about like radicals or in religion. The whole religion's not
Hmm.
bad. It's the
Right.
radicals. You can't ignore them. You have to build safeguards to try to make sure that they're not using this for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But you have to pick qualified professionals. I think that beacon is what that seeds gives people that
Yeah.
foundation. So
Well, and I think a neutral party is really important. Somebody who is representing an attorney, like even an agency, I think agencies holding it can get real fuzzy real quick because they don't have to look at both sides or an attorney. And so that's our personal opinion. But we think the fact that C Trust is a neutral party that is just looking at that contract that's going to execute it accordingly, is the best for both parties. And it does help with that relationship when you guys are able to say like, hey, surrogate, either no, we saw this disbursement. This is why it doesn't qualify. Like I mean, they might be frustrated, but they're only mad and frustrated at you. They're not frustrated with their intended parent. And that's the goal. Or if we have to come back and we have to say, like, oh no, they did disperse that because of X, Y, and Z, that that keeps everyone's relationship intact. So being that neutral party is really important.
yeah, we take a lot of pride in being kind of the one who helped drive the evolution of escrow. And
Hmm.
the kind of state in the way we operate is it's not about doing the minimum. It's about, like you said, I did it because I could help a family, right?
Hmm.
That's how we
Yeah.
operate every day. We try to lead from
Yeah.
ahead. And like when we got the first bond in the industry, people were like, why are you doing that? Nobody else has it. It's kind of crazy.
Mm.
And I was like, well, because it's the right thing to do, and I can do it.
Right.
It's an
Right.
investment, it's painful, but I can do
Yeah,
it. It's the right thing to do, and that's what I would want somebody to do managing my money, right?
for sure.
Same
Yeah,
thing with the
that's awesome.
audits. And I remember when we increased it from 100 to from 10 to 50 and then up towards to 100, I was getting the calls like, why in the heck are you doing this? Nobody else even has a $10 million bond. Why do you need 100? And I was like, because I can, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think looking for people that do the right thing consistently and try to exceed standards to better
Hmm.
their business and the way they protect you and serve, I think is really important. And not everybody operates that way because some of those decisions
No,
are hard and they're financial
they
decisions.
are. Yeah. And they're an investment in something that, I even assume you're like, well, this is never gonna be a problem. Like I've trained my people well, I put checks and balances in place, but that is one extra layer of protection. And that shows a lot. And that shows how much you guys care and that you want to take care of people is putting that one extra layer of protection to ensure that frankly, vulnerable families that go through this process don't experience another set of loss that could have been avoidable. So I commend you guys for that. And that is why we choose to partner with y'all because you
Thank
level it
you.
up.
And I know we both share the sentiment of caring about the industry, right? And
For sure.
and the press covers the bad cases or the issues
Every time.
every time, right? They tend to miss the thousands of beautiful journeys and families
Hmm.
and dreams that come true. Um, so we can't ignore the bad actors. What we have to do is continue to work to make it harder for them to operate and to educate
Yeah.
people so they select better
Hmm.
providers.
Yeah.
When you think about the industry as a whole, what does your crystal ball say? What would you like to see
Ooh.
more of?
Ooh, what would I like to see more of? I think from a donor perspective, more openness to what that looks like. The normalization of this is just another way to build your family. Um, but I think there's still some shame around that process, probably because we're telling our children still in middle school that this is how babies are made, and that's not the case. My daughter is in middle school, and she informed her biology teacher last year that no, actually, it just takes an egg and a sperm and a uterus to have a baby, and there's lots of ways to get there. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm about to get a call from this teacher. But that's good. I'm glad my kids
Yeah.
know that because should my daughters ever be faced with infertility, they will know like, man, 1 in 6 women face infertility. And this is something that, other people will come alongside and walk with you on. So I think just that piece would be amazing. More education and transparency around what this looks like and that this is a really beautiful way to build a family. At least from an egg donor perspective, I think surrogacy is getting there a little bit more than egg donation is. I don't think it's going away. I don't think surrogacy and egg donation, we might advance in technology, but I don't think it's going to go that fast, or at least not in my lifetime. So continuing to encourage people on what this looks like for this to be, part of your child's story, part of your family's story, and investing in the people where you look up in 10 years and 20 years and say that you're really glad that this is the way that your child came into this world. I think we're seeing that more and more like kiddo stories matter and where people come from matters and people understanding those pieces. And I hear a lot of moms via egg donation surrogacy, like they're just grateful that there is one more person in their child's life who can cheer on their child. Like, and there is like I feel no maternal bond to, especially in either stance, but I don't have a relationship from the egg donor perspective. But from a surrogate stance, people say like, oh, how could you give up? And I always say, you're not giving up, you're giving back, so it doesn't matter. But next to probably an aunt and a grandma, like I'm the next one that's in line for like cheering him on and wanting what's
Yeah.
best for him. And that's really cool that I think kiddos grow up knowing there are more people in their corner than just their immediate family.
That's so true and so beautiful. You and I spent a lot of time at Seeds on the board
Hmm.
working towards setting standards. How do we
Yeah.
protect the industry? How do we ultimately further protect the beneficiaries of the industry and people
Hmm.
going through this process, including setting standards? And you talked about getting involved in this space 20 years ago, right?
Hmm.
And your tenure in as a surrogate in the business. What most people don't realize is how far the industry's come. And just like, this industry's been around roughly for 40 years. And
Hmm.
what I've seen is, even in my tenure in the business, is a constant evolution for the better.
Right.
Surrogacy is
It is.
growing. It's becoming more popular. It's the need, the medical need is continuing to grow. And what's been amazing to me is put the few bad actors aside, put the hagglers of the game aside. The majority of the people in this industry are amazing and work really hard to help
Most
families.
certainly.
And we keep evolving for the better. And every time there's an event where things go wrong, we learn, right? And we
Yeah,
address
for
it.
sure.
So I think when I kind of look at the industry and what we're going to need to continue to be focused on and diligent about is as we're evolving and growing, we need to keep learning and setting new standards and best practices and education to set expectations, right? So
Hmm.
people know what to expect. And I know you've been a huge part of that and a big advocate of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's still more things to learn. Everything, it changes every day. We say there's new scenarios, new things that happen, different things to navigate. Um, And so we have to stay agile in that. And then I think collectively, people need to stay in community. Agency owners, professionals in this field need to stay in that collective space. And that is one reason why I do really love Seeds, is it is that collective space where people can dialogue and say, this is what we're experiencing. How how can we help and serve this industry long term? And what does that change need to look like based on the landscape that we're experiencing at the time?
Absolutely. There is a ton of collaboration and I think part of the reality of it is there's more demand for surrogacy
Hmm.
and the services than there is supply in
For
terms
sure.
of availability. So whereas there is competition, the real spirit of the industry is and should remain and always be we're a field helping people and we need to keep growing as a field and protecting
Yeah,
everybody.
for sure.
So well,
I
Katie, I've had
agree.
the pleasure of working with you on hundreds of cases. I know you guys do an
Yes.
amazing job and lead with purpose and heart. And
Thank you,
I want to say
Adam.
thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you. It was great to connect.
If somebody wants to get to learn more about Katie, your journeys, or your agency, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can visit us online at createahappyfamily.com. We also have a great podcast that features industry professionals like yourself, as well as tons of stories of families, egg donors, and surrogates. You can find us wherever you listen at Create a Happy Family as well.
Thank you so much, Katie. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.